Operation Jericho, the Amiens prison raid. The fog sat thick over England. It was February 18th, 1944. Group Captain Percy Pickard stared at the weather report. He didn't like what he saw. Visibility was less than half a mile. Clouds hung low over the channel. Snow fell across northern France. Any sane commander would cancel the mission, but Pickard wasn't canceling anything. Inside Amiens prison, 120 French resistance fighters waited to die. The Germans planned to shoot them tomorrow morning. Every hour mattered now. London had received desperate messages from France. The underground network was collapsing. The Gestapo had names. They had locations. They had addresses. The message was clear. Kill the prisoners or free them. Don't let them talk, because if they talked, hundreds more would die. "We're going," Pickard said. His navigator looked up from the maps. "In this weather, sir?" "In this weather." Pickard was 30 years old. He'd flown more dangerous missions than most pilots could imagine. He'd bombed from treetop height. He'd dodged fighters over Germany. He'd brought crews home on burning engines. This mission was different, though. They weren't bombing a factory. They weren't hitting a rail yard. They weren't destroying a bridge. They were attacking a prison, with people inside, people they were trying to save. The plan was insane. They had to breach the outer walls without collapsing them. They had to blow open cell doors using shockwaves. They had to destroy the guard barracks at exactly the right moment. All of this from 50 feet up, at 400 miles per hour, in a wooden airplane. The de Havilland Mosquito was perfect for the job. If anything could be called perfect for a suicide mission, it was fast. Faster than most fighters, it was agile, more maneuverable than any bomber in the world. It could carry 2,000 pounds of bombs. It could fly 400 miles per hour at sea level. It was also made of plywood and balsa wood. One hit from a 20mm cannon and it burned like a torch. The RAF had chosen 19 Mosquitoes for today's raid. Pickard would lead them. Behind him came crews from England, Australia, and New Zealand. The best low-level pilots in the Royal Air Force. They'd trained for weeks at a secret base in Scotland. They'd practiced bombing runs on mock-ups of the prison. Full-size replicas with the same walls and the same dimensions. They'd learned to judge distance at 500 miles per hour. They'd learned to release bombs from 50 feet. They'd learned to escape the blast wave, over and over, day after day, until the movements became automatic. Now it was real. At 11:05, the first Mosquitoes lifted off from Hunsdon Airfield. Their twin Merlin engines roared through the fog. They climbed slowly, then turned southeast. The channel was rough today. Gray waves, white foam, freezing water. Pickard's aircraft led the first wave. 6 Mosquitoes followed him in the 2 flights of 3. Their job was simple on paper: breach the eastern and northern outer walls. Simple on paper, nearly impossible in reality. The second wave would hit the main prison building, target the cell blocks, blow the doors without killing everyone inside. The third wave would destroy the guard barracks and act as backup. Each bomb carried an 11-second delay fuse. The weapon would penetrate the wall before exploding. This gave the aircraft time to escape the blast. At least, that was the theory. They crossed the channel at wave-top height, 50 feet above the water, low enough that radar couldn't track them, low enough that German early warning stations saw nothing. The water rushed past below. Pickard could see individual waves. He could see the foam on their crests. One engine failure here meant death. The Mosquito couldn't maintain altitude on one engine at this height. You'd hit the water at 400 miles per hour. No one survived that. Pickard's navigator, Flight Lieutenant John Broadley, checked the map constantly. Dead reckoning navigation at this altitude. No radio beacons. No landmarks over water. Just compass, stopwatch, and calculations. One wrong turn, and they'd miss the target completely, or worse, bomb the wrong building. They crossed the French coast near Le Tréport at 11:32. Snow covered the fields below. Villages flashed past, churches, farmhouses, bare trees. The mosquitoes flew so low that French farmers could see the pilots' faces. Some waved, some just stared in disbelief. German anti-aircraft crews were caught completely off guard. The British bombers appeared from nowhere. They screamed overhead at 400 miles per hour. Then they were gone. Gunners couldn't track targets moving that fast at that altitude. By the time they swung their weapons around, the aircraft had vanished. Pickard flew between chimneys and church steeples. He followed the roads toward Amiens. Navigation by landmarks now, a bridge here, a crossroads there, a distinctive barn. Everything matched the reconnaissance photos. They were on course, on time, on target. Ahead, the city of Amiens appeared through the snow. Its buildings spread along the Somme River. Cathedral spires rose above the rooftops. And there, on the eastern edge of town, stood the prison. A massive Victorian building shaped like a cross. 3 stories of gray stone, small barred windows. A fortress. Around it ran the outer wall, 20 feet of solid stone topped with barbed wire. Target identified, broadly said over the intercom. Pickard dropped even lower. He was now at 20 feet above the ground. The earth blurred beneath him. Rooftops flashed past on both sides. His hands were steady on the controls. His breathing was calm. He'd done this 100 times in training, but this time, people's lives depended on getting it exactly right. The prison grew larger in his windscreen. He could see the outer wall now, the guard towers, the main gate. He could see German soldiers in the courtyard. 300 yards to target. 250. 200. He lined up on the eastern wall, the exact spot they'd practiced hitting, the spot where the wall met the main building's east wing. 150 yards. 100. Pickard's thumb hovered over the bomb release. 50 yards. Bombs away. 4 500-pound bombs dropped free. The Mosquito lurched upward from the sudden weight loss. Pickard pulled back hard on the stick. The aircraft climbed. His altimeter spun upward. 100 feet. 200. 300. The bombs struck the base of the eastern wall. They penetrated deep into the stone foundation. 11 seconds passed. Then the world exploded. The eastern wall disintegrated in a massive blast. Stone blocks weighing hundreds of pounds flew through the air. A breach 20 feet wide opened up. Dust and smoke billowed upward. The shock wave rattled windows half a mile away. The second and third Mosquitoes in Pickard's flight dropped their bombs on adjacent sections. More explosions. More breaches. The entire eastern wall was gone, replaced by gaping holes and rubble. Inside the prison, German guards in the mess hall heard the blasts. The building shook. Dishes fell from shelves. Men dove under tables, then they ran outside. They saw dust and smoke rising from the eastern wall. They saw massive holes where solid stone had stood moments before. They didn't understand what was happening. Then the second wave arrived. These Mosquitoes came from the northwest. They targeted the northern outer wall and the main prison building. Flight Lieutenant Ian McRitchie led this wave. He'd flown 27 combat missions. He was 23 years old. He brought his Mosquito in at 40 feet, even lower than Pickard, skimming the rooftops of Amiens. The northern wall filled his windscreen. "Steady," his navigator said. "Steady. Now," McRitchie released. 4 more bombs fell. They hit the wall perfectly, right at the base, right where the foundation met the ground. The explosions tore the wall apart. Another massive breach opened. Stone and dirt fountained upward. The Mosquitoes behind McRitchie targeted the main prison building. This was the hardest part, the most dangerous part. Inside that building were the cells. Inside the cells were the people they were trying to save. Too much explosive and they'd kill everyone. Too little and the cell doors wouldn't open. The pilots had to be perfect. Squadron leader Bob Iredale lined up on the eastern wing. He could see the barred windows. He could see the slate roof. He released from 50 feet. The bombs smashed through the roof. They penetrated the top floor. They fell into the second floor. Then they exploded. The blast ripped through the interior of the building. Walls collapsed. Floors buckled. Cell doors blew off their hinges, but the main structure held. The walls didn't collapse completely. The building didn't pancake into rubble. It was the most precise bombing run of the war. Another Mosquito targeted the western wing. Same result. Massive internal damage, doors blown open, but the structure survived. The third Mosquito in this wave had a different target, the guard barracks. This was easier. No one cared about precise damage here. The goal was simple destruction. The pilot lined up on the two-story building where off-duty German soldiers slept and ate. He released all 4 bombs at once. Direct hit. The barracks exploded. The entire building collapsed in seconds. Walls fell inward. The roof crashed down. 40 German soldiers died instantly, crushed under tons of rubble. No warning, no chance to escape. In the main prison building, inmates heard the roar of aircraft engines. They felt the building shake violently. Some were thrown to the floor. Then they heard something they'd been praying for, the sound of cell doors breaking. Metal screamed. Locks shattered. Hinges tore from stone. Doors fell open. Prisoners looked at each other in shock. Then someone yelled, "Run!" They poured into the corridors. Some were bleeding from flying debris. Some limped on injured legs. Some carried unconscious cellmates. They ran for the stairs, for the courtyard, for the gaping holes in the outer walls. German guards tried to stop them. They fired rifles into the crowds. Some prisoners fell. Most kept running. There were too many escapees, too much chaos. The guards couldn't stop them all. Through the breaches in the eastern wall, prisoners sprinted into the streets of Amiens, still wearing striped prison uniforms, still covered in dust and blood, but free. Outside the prison walls, French civilians waited. Word had spread somehow through the resistance network. People knew the raid was coming. They brought coats, civilian clothes, blankets, hiding places. As prisoners emerged from the breaches, French men and women ran forward. They threw coats over striped uniforms. They grabbed prisoners by the arms and led them into alleys. "This way, quickly, follow me. We have a safe house." The Germans were too stunned to react effectively. By the time they organized pursuit, most escapees had vanished into the city. The third wave of Mosquitoes arrived at 12:06. Squadron leader Dale Maxwell led these 6 aircraft. They were supposed to be backup, only attack if the first 2 waves failed. But as Maxwell circled over Amiens, he saw smoke and dust everywhere. Visibility was terrible. He couldn't tell if the mission had succeeded. "We're going in," he decided. His Mosquitoes targeted sections of wall that looked insufficiently damaged. They dropped more bombs, more explosions, more breaches. One aircraft hit the main gate. The massive wooden doors and stone arch disintegrated. Another wide exit opened. More prisoners ran. The entire operation from first bomb to last took exactly 4 minutes. 240 seconds of precision violence. Then it was over. The Mosquitoes turned northwest. Time to go home. Time to run for the channel before German fighters arrived. Pickard's aircraft led the way back. He flew at maximum speed now, 420 miles per hour at sea level. The Mosquito shook and rattled but held together. Behind him, the other Mosquitoes formed up. They stayed low, hedge-hopping across the French countryside, but German fighters were scrambling from nearby airfields. The Luftwaffe knew something big had just happened in Amiens. A Focke-Wulf 190 appeared from the clouds. The German pilot was skilled. He'd flown combat missions on the Eastern Front. He knew how to hunt. He spotted Pickard's Mosquito flying alone, slightly separated from the others. The Focke-Wulf dove. Pickard saw him coming. He pushed the throttles to maximum power. The Merlin engine screamed. The Mosquito accelerated. 430 miles per hour, 440, but the Focke-Wulf was faster in a dive. The German pilot closed to 300 yards. 200, 100. He opened fire. 20-millimeter cannon shells tore into the Mosquito's tail section. Wood splintered, metal twisted. Control cables snapped. More shells hit the fuselage. They punched through the thin plywood skin. They struck fuel tanks. Aviation fuel sprayed into the slipstream. It ignited instantly. The Mosquito's entire tail section burst into flames. Pickard tried to climb, tried to gain altitude for the crew to bail out. But the controls were dead. The elevator cables were cut. The aircraft rolled left. The nose dropped. The Mosquito dove toward the ground. Pickard fought the controls, broadly braced for impact. They hit a snow-covered field at 300 miles per hour. The impact was instantaneous. The Mosquito disintegrated, burning wreckage scattered across 200 yards. Both men died on impact. No suffering, no pain. Just there one moment, gone the next. French farmers found the wreckage minutes later. They pulled the bodies from the burning debris. They covered them with blankets. Later, they buried them with full honors in a local cemetery. Back at Amiens, the prison was utter chaos. Smoke poured from the damaged buildings. Fires burned in the guard barracks. Dust hung in the air like fog. German soldiers ran everywhere. Some tried to fight fires. Some tried to round up escapees. Some just stood and stared at the devastation. 258 prisoners had escaped through the breaches. 187 ordinary criminals, 71 resistance members, but 102 prisoners lay dead in the rubble, killed by the bombs that were supposed to save them. Another 74 were wounded, some critically. The raid was both a stunning success and a terrible tragedy. German reinforcements arrived 20 minutes after the attack. SS troops, Gestapo officers, police with dogs. They fanned out across Amiens. They searched houses. They set up roadblocks. They interrogated everyone they found. Over the following days, they recaptured 93 escapees. Back to prison, back to cells, back to interrogation. Some were shot immediately. Others were sent to concentration camps in Germany. But 165 prisoners stayed free, hidden by the French resistance, moved from safe house to safe house, eventually smuggled out of the area. Among them were the most important resistance leaders, the ones with the most intelligence, the ones the Gestapo wanted most desperately. These men and women survived to continue the fight. They provided crucial intelligence to London. They helped coordinate the D-Day invasion 4 months later. They sabotaged German supply lines. They guided Allied paratroopers. They radioed German positions. The intelligence they provided saved thousands of Allied lives during the Normandy campaign. Back in England, ground crews at Hunsdon Airfield counted returning aircraft. 16 Mosquitoes landed safely. Their crews climbed out exhausted but alive. They waited for the others. 1 Mosquito landed with battle damage, holes in the wings. 1 engine smoking, but it made it home. That made 17. They waited for 18 and 19. Hours passed. Those aircraft never came. Squadron leader Bob Iredale landed with photographs. His navigator had operated a camera during the attack. The images showed the explosions, the breaches, the prisoners running, proof the mission had worked. But they also showed the devastation, the collapsed sections of building, the smoke and fire. No one knew yet how many prisoners had died. Word of Pickard's death reached the base that evening. A French resistance radio operator reported the crash, confirmed both crew members dead. The crews who'd flown with him were devastated. Pickard was more than a commander. He was a legend, a mentor, a friend. He'd led dozens of impossible missions. He'd always brought everyone home. Until today. The second lost Mosquito had been hit by flak over the French coast. It crashed into the channel. No survivors. The third made it back to England but crashed on landing. Damaged hydraulics. The pilot survived. The navigator didn't. Final casualties: 6 British aircrew dead, 3 aircraft destroyed, versus 165 prisoners freed. Crucial resistance network preserved. Intelligence pipeline maintained. Was it worth it? The question haunted everyone involved. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, commander of Bomber Command, defended the mission. The raid had achieved its objectives. The resistance network survived. The cost was acceptable, but he privately admitted the prisoner casualties troubled him. 102 dead, killed by British bombs. The French resistance sent a message to London. They thanked the RAF for the raid. They mourned the dead but celebrated the survivors. They confirmed the mission had been necessary. The Gestapo had been hours from executing the prisoners. The raid had saved lives despite the cost. Over the following weeks, intelligence reports confirmed the raid's impact. The resistance network in northern France strengthened. New recruits joined. Operations increased. The Germans had lost key prisoners, lost intelligence, lost momentum. Psychologically, the raid shook them. If the British could hit a prison in the middle of a city, with that precision, nowhere was safe. Gestapo headquarters, SS barracks, prison camps. Nothing was beyond reach. German commanders increased security everywhere. They diverted troops from frontline duty to guard installations. They built more anti-aircraft defenses. All of this weakened their ability to fight the coming invasion. In that sense, Operation Jericho was a strategic success. But tell that to the families of the 102 dead prisoners. Tell them their loved ones died for a strategic success. War forces impossible choices, attack and kill some to save others. Wait and everyone dies. Act and accept casualties. Don't act and guarantee them. Pickard and his crews made their choice. They flew into terrible weather. They bombed from suicide altitude. They opened the walls. Some lived. Some died. Some escaped. Some didn't. The technical achievement of the raid cannot be overstated. Hitting specific sections of walls from 50 feet at 400 miles per hour requires extraordinary skill. The Mosquito crews had trained for months. But training and reality are different things. In training, you can abort if conditions aren't perfect. In combat, you attack anyway. In training, you practice on empty mock-ups. In combat, real people depend on your accuracy. The pressure was immense, yet every crew performed nearly perfectly. The bombs hit where they were supposed to. The walls breached where they were supposed to. The cell doors blew open. It was the most precise bombing operation of the entire war. The Mosquito aircraft itself proved its value. After Amiens, it became the weapon of choice for precision raids across Europe. They hit Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen. Another low-level precision raid, another success. They bombed railway tunnels in Norway, U-boat pens in France, specific factory buildings in Germany. Each mission used the same tactics: low altitude, high speed, precision bombing. It worked because the Mosquito was unique. No other bomber could fly that low, that fast, and carry that much explosive. The wooden construction helped. Lighter than metal meant faster acceleration, better climb rate, tighter turns. Yes, it burned if hit, but it rarely got hit because it was so fast and agile. German fighter pilots hated chasing Mosquitoes. The British bombers could outrun most fighters. They could outturn the ones that caught them. Shooting down a Mosquito required perfect positioning and perfect shooting. Most German pilots never got the chance. The Mark VI variant used at Amiens carried 4 500-pound bombs. Maximum load was 2,000 pounds total. Heavy bombers like the Lancaster carried 10 times that much. But heavy bombers couldn't hit specific sections of specific buildings. They carpet-bombed entire areas, killed thousands, destroyed city blocks. The Mosquito could put a bomb through a specific window, could breach a specific wall, could destroy a specific building. That precision made all the difference at Amiens. The 11-second delay fuses were critical. Without the delay, the bombs would explode on impact, on the outside of the walls. That would throw stone fragments inward, kill everyone near the walls, but not breach them effectively. The delay let the bombs penetrate deep into the stone, then explode from inside. This blew the walls outward, created clean breaches. It also gave the aircraft time to escape. At 400 miles per hour, you traveled over 600 yards in 11 seconds. That was barely enough distance. The blast waves still shook the Mosquitoes violently, but it was survivable. Without the delay, the crews would have been killed by their own bombs. The targeting decisions were made by French resistance intelligence. They told London exactly which walls to hit, which buildings held prisoners, which held guards. They drew detailed maps, labeled every room, counted guard positions, timed shift changes. This intelligence made the precision possible. The pilots knew exactly where to aim. They knew what was behind each wall. Without that intelligence, the raid would have been blind bombing, likely would have killed most of the prisoners. The French civilians who helped escapees showed incredible courage. The German penalty for aiding escaped prisoners was death, not just for the helper, for their entire family, sometimes for their whole street. The Nazis made examples of collaborators, public executions, brutal reprisals, yet dozens of French men and women ran toward the prison when the bombs hit. They brought clothes, they offered hiding places, they risked everything. Many of these helpers were resistance members themselves. They'd coordinated with London, they'd prepared safe houses in advance. Others were ordinary civilians who simply saw people in need and helped. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, mothers. They hid escapees in barns, in attics, in cellars, in false-walled rooms. When German soldiers searched, they lied. "No, I haven't seen anyone. No one came this way." Some were caught, some were shot, some disappeared into concentration camps. But most succeeded. Most kept their secrets. Most saved lives. The resistance network moved escapees south, away from Amiens, away from German patrols. They used bicycles, farm carts, trains, walked cross-country at night, passed from cell to cell like a relay race, each group moving the escapee one step farther from danger. Eventually, many reached Spain, or Switzerland, or Allied lines in Italy. It took months. Some didn't make it, but many did. The intelligence these freed resistance members provided proved invaluable. They reported German troop strengths, defensive positions, supply routes. They described coastal fortifications in detail, every bunker, every gun position, every minefield. This intelligence fed into the planning for D-Day. Allied commanders knew what they would face on the beaches. They knew which sectors were most heavily defended, which were vulnerable, where to land, where to avoid. Thousands of Allied soldiers lived because of this intelligence. Battles were won because commanders had accurate information, all made possible because a raid freed 165 prisoners. Group Captain Percy Pickard never knew any of this. He died on the way home from the raid. He never learned how many prisoners escaped, never heard about the intelligence they provided. He just flew the mission, did his job, led his crews with skill and courage. Then a German fighter caught him and he died. He was buried in a French cemetery near where he crashed. The local priest conducted the service. French villagers attended. They laid flowers on the grave. After the war, the French government awarded him the Legion of Honor, the highest French decoration for bravery. They named a street after him in Amiens. Rue Percy Pickard. It runs past the site of the old prison. Every year on February 18th, people gather there. They remember the day wooden bombers came at treetop height, the day the walls came down. Flight Lieutenant John Broadley, Pickard's navigator, is remembered too. He called the targets. He timed the approaches. He made the bombing runs possible. His family received his medals posthumously. His navigator's logbook was returned. It ended mid-sentence on February 18th. The other 4 crew members who died that day are remembered on memorials in England and France. Their names are carved in stone. Their sacrifice acknowledged. But they're not famous. They're not household names. Most people have never heard of Operation Jericho. It was one raid, one day, 4 minutes of combat, overshadowed by D-Day, by the Battle of Britain, by the strategic bombing campaign. But the people who survived because of that raid remember. Their children remember. Their grandchildren remember. In Amiens, the prison still stands. Partially. Some sections were demolished after the war. Others remain as a memorial. You can still see the bomb damage, the blast scars on the walls, the sections that were rebuilt. A plaque commemorates the raid. It lists the names of prisoners who died and the names of aircrew who died saving them. The museum displays photographs from the raid. The navigator's camera captured everything: the approaching aircraft, the explosions, the breaches, the running prisoners. Seeing those images, you understand what the crews accomplished. The impossible precision, the incredible courage. 50 feet up, 400 miles per hour, bombs hitting exactly where intended. No modern bombing could be more precise. Laser-guided weapons, GPS-guided bombs. They're more accurate technically, but they're released from safety from 30,000 feet. The bomber crew faces no risk. The Mosquito crews at Amiens released from 50 feet. If they missed by 50 yards, they killed the wrong people. If their timing was off by 2 seconds, they died. They didn't miss. Their timing was perfect. That's why Operation Jericho matters, not just because of who was saved, but because of how it was done. It proved that skill and courage can overcome terrible odds, that precision matters, that risks taken for the right reasons are worth taking. Pickard and his crews could have refused the mission. The weather was terrible. The target was nearly impossible. The casualties would be high. They could have said no, demanded better conditions, waited for another day. But there was no other day. The prisoners would be dead by morning, so they flew. Into the fog, through the snow, at treetop height into German guns. They bombed a prison without destroying it. They opened walls without collapsing them. They killed guards without massacring inmates. And 3 crews didn't come home. That's the price of doing the impossible. That's what Operation Jericho cost. 165 prisoners freed, 102 prisoners killed, 6 aircrew dead. History can debate whether it was worth it. The survivors know it was. The resistance fighters who continued the struggle, the intelligence officers who used their reports, the Allied soldiers who landed on D-Day with accurate maps. They all owed something to the raid on Amiens prison, to 19 wooden bombers that came screaming out of the fog, to the crews who flew them, to the precision and courage that made the impossible possible. For 4 minutes on February 18, 1944, the walls came down, and freedom walked through.